one thing that gets thrown around a lot is that testosterone makes effort feel good. And the question is, like, how does it do that? Fortunately, over the last 4 or 5 years, there's been such a push with this TRT narrative. There are so many more guys looking into testosterone. Like, when I did it, it felt like a big shot in the dark. It's great that people are now actually able to put their hand up and go, hey, I'm not doing well. But that should be the point where you go, okay, I need to find a fix and solution. Yeah, this is a fascinating subject, and I'm glad we jumped straight in on this, because this is my main area of interest. So exactly what you said before. The serotonin, so there's something called the monoamine hypothesis of depression, which is that depression is caused by low levels of one neurotransmitter, in particular serotonin. This was like very thoroughly debunked a very long time ago. It's just that there has been so much research and so much R&D from pharmaceutical companies that there is just so much money and so much narrative invested in this hypothesis that it will continue to be perpetuated. And just like most things, there is a time and a place for an SSRI. It's just that I would argue that 90 to 95% of the time they are prescribed, it's incorrectly prescribed. And this idea that more serotonin is helpful for depression is not only incorrect, but I would argue, just like what you said before, it's actually counterproductive for a lot of guys. And this, if we are going to be looking at one neurotransmitter that's really important for men's mental health, it is dopamine. We can't really just isolate and go, oh, it's just this one neurotransmitter that fixes things. But if we were going to apply a reductionist lens to it, it would be that one. And the reason for that, and this is what I found in my life, and also, in theory and in working with other guys, the real way that we can treat, and I would argue cure, depression, anxiety, listlessness, anhedonia, which is when people don't feel pleasure from things, is for men. I don't know a thing about women in any regard, but I know about men. And what I know about men is what helps men is momentum and feeling like we're moving forward and we're on a mission and we're accomplishing something, and maybe we're aiming towards something that's just outside of our comfort zone. And ideally where we want to be at is we want to be kind of like halfway down that path already, like being on the path to something that we're working towards. I think that's very therapeutic for the majority of men. And when testosterone is low and we lack that biological internal resilience to stress, not only is that very difficult to do, but it's also very unappealing. One thing that gets thrown around a lot is that testosterone makes effort feel good. And the question is, like, how does it do that? It acts as an internal buffer towards cortisol and adrenaline. So if you're doing something that's, let's say, outside of your comfort zone, it's challenging, it's meant to drive stress. It's meant to be difficult. It's meant to be something that makes you feel uncomfortable. But there's also meant to be this other path where this is this dopaminergic transmission, which is going, yeah, this is hard, but the reward feels good and I want to work towards this. I'm okay taking a risk. Yes, it's challenging, but it's something that I want to achieve because it's meaningful. If you lack that, things just feel really difficult and things feel scary, and people go towards the path of least resistance. They go towards the avoidant kind of behaviors. And then what happens over time is, if you are that guy at 18, by the time you get to 30, if this is what you've done over that developmental formative period of your life where, between 18 and 30, you're meant to be forming your identity as a man, you're meant to be going out and, taking on risks and leaving a mark in the world. And, this is where guys are typically more risk-taking and reckless and, wanting to just have a crack at things. Mm-hmm. I think if you don't do that and you get to 30 and you're the guy who didn't do that and spent the last 12 years watching porn and playing video games and not having much to show for yourself, I think not only does the life that you end up building become a depressive and anxious life to live, but you also feel a degree of this guilt and shame for it. And what a lot of us are dealing with, particularly my generation, so I'm 32, I was born in 92. I started TRT when I was 25, is I have this saying that we were brought up swimming in this proverbial pool of estrogen. And when I say estrogen, I don't mean internal, aromatized estrogen. I mean xenoestrogens, phytoestrogens, environmental endocrine disruptors. And when my generation is, brought up on a diet that is very, very low in micronutrients, we're wrapped in plastic, we're staying inside all the time, we're sedentary, we're not going through these rites of passages or these challenges that we're meant to have growing up as men, it makes a lot of sense to me why so many guys are coming into their early 20s feeling low, feeling scared, having this learned fear, being avoidant of the challenges that they once, or their fathers or grandfathers would have taken a swing at. They're going, oh no, I don't want to do that. That sounds scary. I just want to do the lazy, easy thing. I think a lot of guys are then having this lived experience of going, hey, I'm embodying this human machine. I am consciously experiencing this body that is being, they know that there's something wrong, and they're going to the doctor being like, I don't feel right. I don't feel the way I know I'm supposed to feel. I feel like there's something off. Because they're experiencing this. We're embodying this consciousness that's experiencing the external world and the internal world. And when that feels scary and this feels anxious and something wrong inside, and we go to the doctor and the doctor goes, yeah, you've got a serotonin deficiency. Here's your antidepressant. All your blood work looks good. You're within range. Your testosterone levels are within the healthy range of a 80 or 90-year-old man with prostate cancer. This is totally healthy. There's nothing to worry about. Fortunately, over the last 4 or 5 years, there's been such a push with this TRT narrative. There are so many more guys looking into testosterone. Like when I did it, it felt like a big shot in the dark. But now there are so many younger men who are learning this, they're investigating this, they're seeking out practitioners who know how to work with this. And I think that's really exciting because they're now able to fight back against this environmental chicken and egg cycle, which I think it's exactly that. It's like, is it the chicken or the egg? It's like, it's this perpetuating vicious cycle that's continuing. And I think that TRT, as well as choosing positive diet, lifestyle interventions and looking at things holistically and looking at things as a synergistic approach of what do I need to take, what do I need to do, what do I need to not do, I think they're also equally important. I think this is where guys can actually start to reclaim the masculine birthright and the quality of life that they should have had all along.
If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out via the link below.
From a societal level, kind of looking at it more broad, because when you're speaking about, thriving for things, driving for things, purpose, however you want to say that, that can also be defined as ideology, right? To where if there's a mental health, how do I want to politically correct this? If there's a mental health crisis or a mental health culture, then people can fall into that and make that their ideology. For instance, a lot of people say, if you don't worship a God, then some other ideology is going to take its place. Yeah. Well, that could that take its place to where, I'm basically suffering from mental health, depression, anxiety, or whatever it is. And so are all these other people. And I'm going to follow all these other people because we're kind of all in the same camp. I don't want to say a victimhood because I don't want to tie those two together because that would be false. But how do you get that? How do you get them to break from that, right? Because everybody who I've spoken to is going to say they suffer from some mental health, right, condition. We all do, right? But some are going to be able to lean into that more, for their coping or lack of being able to do things X, Y, and Z that kind of pull into that. And then that becomes a tribe, or could become a tribe. I don't want to speak in absolutes. But would you agree that that is somewhat of a tribe with a large demographic?
Definitely, without a doubt.
All right, so now you're trying to break people out of a tribe, right? Which is like trying to take the serious competitive powerlifter who's in the prime and be able to say, no, we don't want you to do that anymore. We want you to go do this over here. Then they're going to fight against that. Yep. It's almost like a cult-like mentality at the extreme sides of that. So how do we go about addressing that? Or how do you go about addressing that?
Yeah.
I guess where I'm going with this, because if you have a patient or if you have somebody that you're working with, right, and they're part of that ideology, you're not only just trying to treat that person, but you're trying to treat the ideology, the people they surround themselves with are also part of that culture. So you become the people that you surround yourself with. Yeah. So you're trying to pull them kind of out of that culture as well. But what I don't know is how is that culture pulling them back in?
I think there's a couple of things there. I think firstly, just like you absolutely correctly identified, it's much more difficult to unlearn things than it is to learn things. And I think that the most important part of this whole, I guess, educational role that I try to put out there online, I try to make a lot of content for people who are looking for it, is that people need to first identify and realize that their system of beliefs, their ideologies, the tribe that they're surrounding themselves in, it's not working for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be seeking an alternative. Because if everything was working out great, going, yep, I identify with my mental illness, I'm a victim, I'm suffering, everything's terrible. Well, if that's working out great for you, then good for you. But I don't think it is. And I think that that's what people are coming to realize is that, the pendulum always swings just too far in the wrong direction. It went from no one can talk about mental health to, and no one has a mental health problem, to now everyone has a mental health problem. And I think the point that it swung past is that it's great that people are now actually able to put their hand up and go, hey, I'm not doing well. But that should be the point where you go, okay, I need to find a fix and solution, not to be like, I now have an excuse to be a complete and utter failure at all the things that I should have tried at that I just completely avoided because it was all too difficult for me. And I think that whole process, and the thing that I talk to my clients about a lot and all the content I put out, is recognizing and going, this is hard. Like, this is supposed to be uncomfortable. This is supposed to be confronting. This is supposed to be something that is a challenge. And for a lot of guys, it is their rite of passage. If you're in your 20s and your 30s and you're kind of waking up to realizing and going, identifying with these limitations that I have identified and put on myself is not working for me, and then realizing that you have to go out and be your own advocate and find a solution and advocate for yourself, and then actually sometimes guys have to basically take their treatment into their own hands, like what you did with yours, and recognizing and going, hey, this system isn't what I thought it was going to be, and now I actually have to apply a problem-solving lens to this. This takes a lot of bravery, this takes a lot of courage, this takes a lot of resilience, this takes a lot of perseverance, and these are often traits which these guys not only don't have, but they're conditioned to go, oh, these are actually bad things. You don't want to be someone who's, challenging the status quo or pushing against the grain. You're just better off, having your mental health disorder and just, being healthy enough to pay your taxes, but not healthy enough to actually thrive and enjoy your quality of life.
Most men would want to be more confident. Most men would want to put on more muscle and be leaner. Do you understand what you are getting into with this? Because from a surface level standpoint, testosterone is a very easy thing to sell or be sold to men because they want to have more of the things that they associate as a byproduct of more testosterone. I still don't recommend people trial TRT. I think it's a commitment that people should make.